joining us right now via Skype. We're just going to jump right in because we only have her for a few minutes. We have Stacey Gordon. She is the amazing puppeteer who is the voice and at least most of the movements of Julia, the puppet on Sesame Street that we've all been talking about because she's on the autism spectrum. And
right.
We're excited to hear about how this autism mom who has a really interesting background became the voice of this young puppet who is already changing the way the world looks at autism. So, Stacey, welcome to Autism Live and to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here. Now, you've got an extensive background in puppetry. I hear that you started your interest as a teenager. Your grandfather built marionettes.
Yeah, when I was really little, he built marionettes, and that kind of first piqued my interest. My aunt gave me my first crocheted puppet when I was, just a toddler still, probably a baby. And I built my first set of puppets when I was in high school.
And how did that lead to you getting to Sesame Street? Now, this is the story I gotta hear.
Right? So I'd been a puppeteer after, let's see. I was doing puppetry in high school and college, and then I moved to Arizona where I hooked up with the local puppet theater, the Great Arizona Puppet Theater, and started doing their adult series of shows. And that was back when I was a habilitator for kids with autism. And then I left that job and had a baby. And then when he got to be about preschool age, maybe he was about 3, I decided to plunge in full time and try and make it as a puppeteer.
Amazing. And so you mentioned that you were a habilitator, and what exactly does that mean for people who haven't heard that term before?
Sure. So a habilitator is someone who usually works with the local governmental services and goes into somebody's home, and it's not somebody who rehabilitates a child because the child didn't have skills to begin with. It's someone who habilitates them. So I would do a lot of Greenspan therapy, applied behavior analysis, ABA, ABA play when ABA play was brand new. And so I'd go into families' homes, and I would work with their children doing a lot of floor time. I worked with one family for 46 hours a week. And that was for 3 years. So I was full-time with them for 3 years, more than full-time. We're like family.
And then later, your own son was diagnosed with high-functioning autism, which is really coincidental.
Yeah, and it was something where I had seen the signs. I had seen the signs pretty early on. He didn't transition to solid food. He didn't crawl. There were a lot of, he did a lot of stimming and things like that. But it took a while to get him a diagnosis. I kept bringing it up to our pediatrician and other people in our lives, and they were all like, oh, you're kind of looking for it. You were in the field. So it was kind of an interesting journey for us for his diagnosis.
Yeah.
But he's doing well now?
He is. And I keep saying over and over, if this had come up for me 2 years ago, I would not have been able to do it because he was at a point where I was picking him up from school probably 3 to 5 days a week early because he was having so many meltdowns.
Okay.
Wow.
So how is your background working as a habilitator and also your background with your own son, how has that helped prepare you for this work you're doing with the character of Julia?
Well, gosh, I mean, for one, I know what a meltdown looks like.
Right.
And I know how to make it look like a meltdown and not a temper tantrum.
Uh-huh.
I think that it gives me it allows me to come from a place of compassion.
Right.
As a mom and as somebody who's worked with a lot of these kids, both high functioning and severe, the family that I worked with for 3 years, I mean, I know what it's like to clean poop out of a child's hair.
Yeah.
Right.
On a regular basis.
And do you think, Stacey, there's been such an outpouring of support and love and just people being thrilled about this character, about Julia, and as people have seen her, it's so hard in the autism community to get everybody on the same page and embrace something. And I gotta say, I think that you and Sesame Street have done the impossible. We want to send you to the Middle East, but right? But you've somehow united the autism community, and there's been such an outpouring of love for this character. And I'm wondering, do you think that maybe it's because everybody's seeing something genuine, because you are coming from a place of compassion and understanding?
Gosh, I hope so. But also, I have to say that there are so many people involved with this project who are also autism moms and dads.
Yeah, tell us about that. You said the writer.
The writer, Leslie Kimmelman. She's the author. She's an autism mom. Her son's 20, and Frank Campagna. He's the AD, and he directed. He's the. Gosh, I wish I remembered his official title. Sorry, Frank. But he's got the blog Autism Daddy. There are so many people, or Christine Ferraro, the writer of Julia's episodes, her brother has autism. Everyone is affected by autism, whether they realize it or not. But there are so many people that this project is so close to. And so, I mean, the genuine voices go back long before me. I've only been involved with this for a little bit more than a year, and they've been developing this for 10 years.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because people go, well, this is amazing that all of a sudden Julia has come about, but this has taken a lot of time, and there's been a lot of research that has gone into this. And the decision to take her from a character in a book to bring her into the show, I know everybody was so excited about that, and as they build the character, they were looking for the perfect voice. And they held auditions. How did you hear about the audition, Stacey?
So I first heard about it when I got an email from them February 2nd, 2016. So I got an email from them, and I honestly, it was titled Sesame Workshop Autism Initiative. And I was like, I signed up for a mailing list because I was all over this. When they first put it online in digital form in October of 2015, I scoured it. I mean, I watched every video 3 times just the day that it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say Isaiah is the closest to my son. Just, it brought back a flood. The videos of Isaiah brought back a flood of memories.
Wow.
It was like, he used to do that. He used to do that. I got an email saying that I'd come highly recommended by 2 of the puppeteers who worked on the show and knew me and knew that I had a strong connection to autism. And that's what they were looking for. They were looking for a female puppeteer with a strong connection to autism.
And there we're seeing a shot of Julia.
She's absolutely beautiful, and strikingly, she resembles you a little bit.
She does.
So that first day that it came out, I scoured PR. I Googled it. I just got obsessed. My own,
And there you are with the cast.
So I scoured, all of their media and to find out if there was, who was going to be the puppet, or who was going to be the puppeteer. And when was there going to be a puppet, to find out who it was. And just to see, do I know them? And then I found out that there wasn't going to be a puppet. And I turned around. I was on my laptop, sitting on the bed with my husband. And I turned around and looked at him, and I said, this is never going to happen because they don't know me. But if ever she gets turned into a puppet, I want to be Julia. She's me.
Well, and you've said that you feel like every moment in your life was preparing you to be Julia.
Yeah. I mean, I moved to Arizona and applied to a nannying position that ended up being for a little girl with autism. We were fresh out of college and newlyweds. So I was like, I was a nanny in college. I'll do that again. and actually turned out for this little girl with autism, and they sent me to go become a habilitator to work with her. I'd already worked with a lot of kids on the spectrum, and so it just seemed right. But what are the odds that that's the one that I would go to? My grandfather volunteered in a school for autism, reading to students after school. I mean, it
all makes sense.
Yeah.
It all makes sense.
You have a very, very strong connection, obviously, in so many different levels to autism.
And Julia is lovely. You go ahead. I want to ask about the bunny before we run out of time. But
Okay. Well, I wanted to know what your hopes are for kids watching, typical kids and parents of typical children, as they watch Julia and the storyline, and they watch, how all the characters on the show interact.
I just got goosebumps. I just got goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, as autism moms, we all know the struggle that our children have faced. Whether they got an early diagnosis or a late diagnosis, the bullying and the non-acceptance and the misunderstandings they happen every day. I can remember putting my kid in swim lessons when he was 4. And of course, he couldn't deal with it and had meltdowns every single day. And the other kids were making play dates with each other. And the other moms were going out to lunch together. And I was like, I wonder if these people all knew each other ahead of time. Like, I don't understand. What is this social dynamic that these other children are creating? And they didn't. They'd all met at swim class, and my kid wasn't involved. It wasn't because he didn't want to be involved. It was because he didn't know how to be involved. And I really like that Sesame Street takes the onus off of our children with autism, and not necessarily places it on the neurotypical children, but asks the neurotypical children to take more responsibility. In that, if you see someone who's not playing with you, it doesn't mean that they don't want to play with you. It just might mean that they don't know how to ask.
Yeah.
In addition to that, the fact that these kids are seeing Elmo and Abby just treating her like a regular kid, that's the biggest thing for me. One Puppeteer and I were just chatting. She's been on the show forever, Pam Arciero. She said one of her friends just called her and said, my daughter is 2.5, and in the bathtub, she's, they're having their little daily bathtub chat. And she said, Mommy, I have to tell you something. And she said, what is it? And she said, I have autism. So this is a neurotypical child.
Yes.
Seeing that as a positive thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that a fabulous thing? I want you to know that even Joanne Lara, from the head of Autism Works Now, has said that this is going to change employment for people on the autism spectrum in 10 years more than anything else, because when neurotypical kids are the HR director and have grown up watching this, they're going to be like, I can hire this person because I know exactly what this is, and there's nothing
to be afraid of.
Yeah, there's nothing to be afraid of.
And there's strengths, in fact. I'm sure they'll be learning strengths.
Yes.
Yes. And there are scripts that point out the strengths that are coming down the line, and they're so great.
We are just loving it. And I know you have to go. We could talk to you for 7 more hours. You have to come back sometime. But before you go, I think people are already clamoring, wanting to get, is the name of the bunny Fluffster?
Fluffster is the bunny. And right now, Julia is the only plush.
Okay. Well, tell everybody there, people are asking for Fluffster.
I know. I've asked for Fluffster. I went over to the licensing department and I said, just want to put in a request for a sensory stimulating, sensory gratifying version of Fluffster.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
Yeah.
So we're so excited to keep watching. Of course, people can be watching Sesame Street on HBO. Is there any place else that we want to send them to so that they can keep track of what you're doing?
Oh yeah. I'm sitting in my puppet building studio right here. It's Puppet Pie. And then I did make a Facebook page so people can get in touch with me if they don't want to see the puppets and stuff that I do. Then I just made a Facebook fan page for myself,
Okay,
which
and
was
that's
kind of a weird situation, but it just gives people an opportunity to send me messages. And I've had some really great conversations with. I had a really great conversation the other day with a woman on the spectrum and who's an aspiring writer. It was lovely.
and
Yeah.
that's Stacey Gordon, Stacey with an Stacey Gordon.
Yes, Gordon, and you'll know it's the right one because it's a picture of me and Julia together.
Okay.
Wonderful. Stacey, you're doing an amazing job, and we're so happy for you that your life is cohesed in this way to be an incredible voice in this incredible project.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you
Thrilled.
with us today.
Love to have you back again
And Julia.
sometime. Yes, give our love to Julia and everybody there for writing and for conceiving this. It's amazing. This is a game changer.
Yeah, I feel really, really honored to have been the one chosen to participate in it.
You're the perfect choice.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay.